This is the podcast Il Zebra's Transformations. I am the Il Zebra, also known as Ilze B. Berzina. The main purpose of this podcast is to continue journaling so that I keep healing. I have been notorious for abandoning journaling, so I figured if I'd have listeners, they'd keep me accountable. This is not a diary, meaning that my records won't necessarily reflect events in their chronological order, nor do I promise that the details will be accurate. I am doing this for myself, so I have a fixed record in time of my voice, the way I think, feel, and talk about things in my present and past, and be able to modify the trajectories as I desire, and stop doing things the way that harms me. If listening to my processing of traumas helps someone else along the way, that's even better. I'll take it as having accomplished something for the higher good of all concerned. Otherwise, enjoy it even if for entertainment or to collect information. But now, without further ado, let's start. Managing voice can be tricky. I didn't realize how tricky it could be until I tried recording the intro part of my podcast, the part that you just heard. I recorded it 3 times. Even though I wanted to be gentle with myself and not overly critical, I hated the result of the first 2 attempts. The main thing I hated was the vibe. I felt like I sounded overly pathetic, and I have to admit, I had too much of a victim voice, which I was ashamed of. I know that it is typical for victims to feel ashamed of what had happened to them, as if it was their fault. But I also believe that we are all meant to heal from experiences of victimization, and if we don't attempt to do so, there might be a reason behind it. Maybe it's because we are benefiting from being seen as a victim. I'm used to speaking publicly, and when I do, I rely not only on my voice, but also on other expressive tools in my arsenal. They can be props, slides, gestures, and facial expressions. When using only my voice, I feel exposed, because the slightest vibrations can be noticed. I used to have a friend who was dying, and he knew it. One time, he called me up and asked me to breathe with him and allow him to listen to my breath. It was a bizarre request. I felt uncomfortable, but I couldn't say no to a dying man, so I agreed to fulfill his last wish and did it, feeling conflicted and manipulated. I remembered that experience as I was recording the intro, and I realized that breathing and voice can make one feel more vulnerable than anything, almost naked. So I need to learn to get comfortable with it. It's gonna take time. I expect that my voice will change as I get used to podcasting, so it will be interesting to look back after some time. Yet I also want my podcast voice to convey who I am today. But after I listened to the results of the first 2 attempts, I realized I sounded like that girl I used to be when I made videos for English-speaking learners of Latvian. We are creatures of habit, aren't we? So it's time to shed that old skin. I've been a fan of podcasts since I discovered Amy Porterfield around 2016. Podcasts have helped me to heal and grow, so I hope mine will help someone too. If you have nothing to do with the online marketing world, You may have not heard her name, but you might have heard of the world-famous motivational speaker Tony Robbins. Well, Amy Porterfield was the director of content development at Anthony Robbins Companies for 6 years before she made a big, bold leap to start her own business, and she succeeded. Today, a text on her website states, "I'm Amy. I'm an online marketing expert, and my business has earned over 100 million from my email list." I've been Amy's student since 2017, and I've kept watching her throughout the years. She can be a fantastic role model for female businesswomen who want to focus on making money without compromising the culture of their relationships. However, I'm not mentioning Amy Porterfield because of her business achievements, but because of her voice. As I said, I first saw Amy around 2016, which was 3 years after my small family unit, which consisted of my then minor son Phillips, my elderly Dalmatian Sarah, and myself, landed in Washington, D.C. to start our new lives in the U.S. Behind, I had left my older son, who was of age by then, so I couldn't get the same kind of visa for him as I did for his brother, and my extended family. I also could no longer participate in my 2 companies daily, so I had to figure out what to do in terms of gaining income in the US. I discovered that everything was very different in the US when compared to how it was in Latvia and Europe, for that matter. So it took me 3 years of learning, trial and error, until I felt I had touched upon something that might work. Well, maybe I'm slow or overly cautious, but whatever. I had already started learning about building an online business from someone named Grace Lever when Facebook showed me Amy's ad. She had recorded it on her phone, and the simplicity of it, combined with the warmth of her voice, attracted me so much that I looked her up and started listening to her podcast. About half a year later, I quit my previous instructor, having decided she was not nurturing enough with her students, and I bought 2 of Amy's programs, believing she would care. Following her instructions, I built online courses and established a sales funnel and an email list. Of course, it wasn't because of her voice then, but rather her clear instructions and my own perseverance and grit. Yet I still found her voice pleasing, and I might have tried to have a similar vibe until I heard Stephen Bartlett's interview with Evie Pomporous, who is a former special agent with the U.S. Secret Service. An hour and 20 minutes into that interview, Stephen asked Evie, "Do you think your life would have gone differently, and you wouldn't be sat here now if you spoke differently, in a high-pitched, fast way?" Who was going to take me seriously if I said, "Hi everybody, welcome, today we have a mass shooting"? Evie explained why it was important for her to develop a strong and anchored voice. Theoretically, I knew it all, but I needed to hear it from this woman to realize it was the time for me to experiment with new speaking styles and pick them appropriate to my content and message while still maintaining my identity. I pondered about the name of my podcast. First, I wanted to call it The Diary of an Ill Zebra, because I am a fan of Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO. Being a word nerd, I searched the net to understand the difference between diary and journal. I thought diary was British, as Stephen is, while journal was American. The search results said that a diary records events in chronological order, while a journal is more flexible and can be used for various purposes. Going by that definition, it would be more precise to call it the journal of an ill zebra. But it didn't sound appealing. Then I thought, maybe Choose Ill Zebra Stories and Friends, the name of a playlist on my YouTube channel. Finally, I decided to use the word transformations in it, because I am a word nerd, as I said, and I wanted to have at least one word to convey what the podcast would be about, precisely. The ill zebra is there as a teaser. You'll hear the ill zebra story in my next episode. Now, if by what you've heard so far you've concluded that this podcast will be about how to grow businesses and make money, that's not accurate. I already gave you 2 suggestions on who to learn it from if that's what you want. I'm not the best role model for that. Yet it will be about money from the perspective of how we may be carrying energetic blocks within us that obstruct the flow. One of my coaches, Christina Berkeley, once said that people would rather talk about struggles in their sex life than financial problems. And she's right. I've seen that too. And I've experienced that too. It's been painful to look at that shadow side of me because I've been positioning myself as an entrepreneur. But I understand that without admitting it and addressing the issue, there will be no progress. Finally, my disclaimers. In this podcast, I plan to talk about mental and physical health and what has helped me to heal. If you feel inspired, go research the topics. And if you decide to start a certain practice, be careful and kind to yourself. Take baby steps. This isn't a race. If you have any medical condition, you should consult your doctor before you start. And please mind that nothing that I say in this podcast should be regarded as medical advice. What you will be hearing is my reasoning through concepts that were new to me at the time, so that I can understand them and decide if I would benefit. If I then say I do, it doesn't mean you will. We are all very unique. And one more thing. I am an artist and storyteller. I'm sharing my stories because that's what artistic people do. Take it as fiction, a form of my art, and the result of my imagination. Even though I may sound as if I'm recalling events that actually happened, and even though you may hear me talk about the suffering I seemingly endured in real life, I'm not confirming it happened, and I'm not blaming or accusing anyone, nor should you. I take all my life lessons with gratitude, trusting that they are given to me to expand my soul. You've been listening to the podcast of Ilzibi. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and share it to show me your support and help me grow. If you want to learn more about me, my causes, my products, and my services, please visit my website ilzebe.com. That's ILZEBE.com.